Family, why does 50 Cent keep beating Rick Ross like Ross owes him a mortgage payment, a car note, and a seance fee all in the same week? I mean it. Watching this feud in 2026 is like watching two heavyweight chess players fighting over a checkers board while a live studio audience eats popcorn, and neither one of them will step off the table long enough to notice the whole neighborhood is laughing at them. If you don't know what I'm talking about, let me get you caught up, because the last 72 hours in hip-hop have been unhinged, unforgivable, and, honestly, unmissable. Rick Ross dropped his album Setting Stone. The numbers came in soft as microwaved bread, and instead of letting the music breathe on its own, instead of letting the studio work carry its own weight, Rick Ross has turned himself into a spreadsheet. A living, breathing accountant. A mathematician in a fur coat. A licensed tax preparer who forgot to bring his own W-2. And every time Rick Ross opens his mouth to explain the arithmetic of a flop, 50 Cent is already screenshotting it, printing it, framing it, laminating it, and mailing it back to him with a laughing emoji stapled to the top corner and a return address that just says sent from a beach. Family, this is not a rap beef anymore. This is a hostage situation with a receipt printer. And the printer is out of ink because Rick Ross keeps demanding a fresh copy every hour. Before I go any further, let me be honest with you, because that is the least I owe you as a person who covers this culture. I have been in this business long enough to know that Rick Ross and 50 Cent don't actually hate each other the way the internet wants you to believe. They need each other. They are two magnets pointed at the same pole, forever repelling, forever attracted, forever locked in the exact orbit that makes both of their brands measurable. Because here is what nobody talks about. If Rick Ross wakes up tomorrow and 50 Cent is on a tropical island with no phone service, Rick Ross doesn't know what to post before breakfast. And if 50 Cent wakes up tomorrow and Rick Ross has retired, 50 Cent's entire Instagram becomes a ghost town by lunchtime. These two men are not enemies. They are co-workers in a decades-long content factory, and business is booming, and neither one of them has taken a vacation day since the Bush administration. Let me set the scene, because the last week has been a masterclass in how not to promote your own record. Rick Ross put out Setting Stone. The album is fine. Sonically, it holds up. Rick Ross still knows how to construct a bar, still knows how to write a beat, still knows how to sound expensive on a track, still knows how to make you feel like the Bentley just glided past you on a boulevard that doesn't exist in your city. But the sales are a different conversation. And instead of letting critics have that conversation, instead of letting the streaming platforms speak for themselves, instead of letting the fans post their favorite tracks in peace, Rick Ross grabbed a calculator, sat down on Instagram Live, and decided to teach the world remedial math on a Sunday afternoon like an uncle who just discovered fractions. Rick Ross himself said, and I quote him carefully, he is playing the long game with Setting Stone. He said he pulled the streaming report for the first 2 weeks. He said the album pulled 63.5 million streams. He said that equates to roughly 42,000 albums sold, which does not include physical product. He said that breaks down to 22,000 the first week and 20,000 the second week. He said, and this is important, that there is no fall off. He said this is a long game. He said, guys, this is how we hustling. Family, when I tell you my jaw dislocated, and my producer had to slide it back into position with a chopstick and a prayer. Because in 20 years of watching Rick Ross carry that Miami boss persona, I have never, and I mean never, heard Rick Ross break down streams to equivalent albums like he was defending a doctoral thesis at Wharton. Rick Ross has spent 2 decades telling us the boss doesn't count coins. Now the boss is counting coins live on camera and asking us to grade his homework, and honestly, the homework has visible eraser marks. And that, my friends, is where the whole rollout went sideways, slid into a ditch, and started begging the tow truck for a jump. Because the moment Rick Ross went into calculator mode, 50 Cent smelled blood in the water from 3 time zones away. And 50 Cent, if you know his history, is the great white shark of hip-hop pettiness. He doesn't need a reason. He needs a scent. And Rick Ross doused himself in chum, then went swimming laps in the shark tank, then posted an Instagram live from the shark tank asking why it smelled like fish. Within hours, 50 Cent was on his Instagram posting the headline that read, "Rick Ross hits a new chart low with his latest album." 50 Cent captioned it with one of the most surgical lines of his career. He wrote, "Laugh out loud, I'm sorry, it's over, can't fake it forever." That's it. That's the whole caption. 9 words. And it hit like a car door in a quiet parking garage. Now family, let me step back and give you the wider ledger, because the arithmetic here is not friendly to Rick Ross, and pretending otherwise would insult everybody's memory. 50 Cent's debut album Get Rich or Die Tryin' sold over 8 million copies in the United States alone. 8 million. Not streams. Not projections. Actual plastic. The Massacre, his follow-up, moved 1.1 million units in the first week. Not streams. Not equivalents. Physical, tangible, wrapped in plastic units that people carried to a cash register in a mall that no longer exists. That is a level of commercial dominance that hip-hop simply does not produce anymore, and the industry has quietly decided to stop measuring against it because the comparison is embarrassing. Even Animal Ambition, 50 Cent's last official studio album, opened in the mid-40s on the Billboard 200. That was the album he famously flipped into a Bitcoin bag, and the Bitcoin bag alone probably outperformed the record, the tour, and half the label. So when Rick Ross tries to reframe 42,000 streaming equivalent albums as a slow burn masterpiece, 50 Cent has receipts sitting in a vault the size of a Costco warehouse in a suburb nobody visits. The man doesn't have to argue. He just has to breathe near a microphone and the entire trending column bends in his direction. But here is where the drama tightens like a corset. Rick Ross would not stop. Rick Ross doubled down, and then Rick Ross tripled down, and then Rick Ross quadrupled down, and by the 4th doubling I was texting my producer asking if Rick Ross had accidentally locked himself inside his own Instagram live and needed a locksmith. Rick Ross went back on and delivered another economics lecture, this time with hand motions. He said the drastic fall-offs you see with other artists, those are the ones with inflated numbers. He said the new flex is no bots. He said keep it genuine, keep it pure, let the music fight the battles. He said, the biggest boss is telling you, this is how we winning, we hear 20 years later. And then, family, then he turned to a totally different target. He said, those gun sneakers about to be in Costco, baby. He said he liked the Lloyd Banks high tops better. He said give Lloyd Banks his own sneaker. He said since the Free Boozy campaign isn't happening anymore, 50 Cent can focus on the footwear division. Peep this angle, because this is where the strategy exposes itself in high definition. Rick Ross knows that 50 Cent's Reebok deal is being repackaged in retail. Rick Ross knows the shoes are running through discount aisles. And Rick Ross saw an opening, the same way a boxer sees a dropped guard, and he threw a jab that landed on the shoe, not on the man. Bringing Lloyd Banks into the conversation was surgical, because Lloyd Banks is one of the few people 50 Cent has never publicly torched. Lloyd Banks is the sacred G-Unit relic. Rick Ross weaponized loyalty against the general. That was clever. That was strategy book clever. That was Sun Tzu with a Miami license plate. But cleverness without commercial numbers behind it is just a smart guy losing loudly at a poker table where everyone can see his cards through the reflection in the chandelier. And 50 Cent, being 50 Cent, does not respond to jabs. 50 Cent responds with a bulldozer. Within a day, 50 Cent posted a screenshot listing his 10 highest performing television shows on the Starz network. Power Book 3, Raising Kanan. Force. Power Book 2, Ghost. Fightland, the new franchise. BMF, the Nowhere Man. The whole Power universe he architected from the ground up while everybody else was arguing on Twitter about who had the better mixtape run in 2007. He captioned it, "The facts are the facts. I'm about to turn it up. Fightland is the new wave. Last episode of Raising Kanan drops this week. Check me out." And in that one caption, he shifted the entire battlefield off the music charts and onto the television grid, where he is objectively, and I mean objectively, with data, with ratings, with executive credit, the most successful Black executive producer of the last decade. Now the Whisper Network keeps telling me that 50 Cent's strategy in this feud is not about music at all, and it has not been about music since roughly 2014. He knows Rick Ross has bars. He knows Rick Ross has catalog. He knows Rick Ross is respected as a technician in the booth. But 50 Cent is not fighting the music fight anymore. 50 Cent is fighting the portfolio fight. And in the portfolio fight, Rick Ross has Wingstop and Checkers. 50 Cent has scripted television, spirits, boxing promotion, a film studio, streaming deals, cognac partnerships, and, depending on which week you ask him, a distribution empire that stretches from Louisiana to Long Island. Different weight class, different tax bracket, different game, different chessboard entirely. Shifting gears for a moment, because I want you to hear me clearly on something, and I don't want anybody to miss this part. This is not me picking a side. I have said, and I will keep saying, both of these grown men have won. Both of them come from a country that told black boys they wouldn't make it past 25, and both of them are now in their 50s trading barbs on Instagram with generational wealth in the bank and multiple properties in states they can barely spell. That is a miracle. That is the American story wearing a fur coat and a bulletproof vest. But somewhere along the way, both of them decided that the American story wasn't enough, that they had to keep punching each other in the ribs in front of the entire class like two kids who never got picked first at recess. And what started as playground energy has calcified into a decade-long ritual that neither man can quit, and now the ritual is bigger than either performer. Handle this softly, because I don't want to speak for anybody, and I don't want to pretend I have access to conversations I have never been in. But if you follow the timeline, the Rick Ross versus 50 Cent tension has never been about music. It started as territorial. It shifted to personal. It shifted to legal when the courtrooms got involved. It shifted to family, which is where it should have stopped. It shifted to businesses. It shifted to sneakers, television, wings, tenders, tequila, and now streaming equivalent album units. Every single year of the last 15, this feud has found a new outfit to wear, a new venue to play, a new hostage to hold. And every single year, the internet dresses it up like it's fresh, like the audience wasn't there for the previous chapter, like the timeline didn't just repeat itself with a different backdrop. Now, if you want to see how deep the theater goes, let me walk you through the Detroit incident, because this one is a small crime scene all by itself. About 2.5 weeks back, video began circulating from a Rick Ross concert in Detroit. The video showed a mostly empty venue at 8 in the evening. Now the show was scheduled for 8:30. So if you are being honest with yourself, and the internet, family, is never honest with itself, you already know that an 8 p.m. crowd shot for an 8:30 show is not evidence of anything except that concerts still run on colored people time in America. 8 p.m. at any concert in America looks like a barbershop after last call. 8 p.m. at any concert in America looks like a mall food court on a Tuesday. But that did not stop the clip from traveling. And it did not stop 50 Cent from reposting it with the caption energy of a man who found free money on the sidewalk. Now here is where the ground got interesting. Because after Twitter began showing the country of origin for accounts that push slanderous content, the account that originated that Detroit clip traced back to Ghana. Family, I say this with love and geographic curiosity. What in the world does an account operating out of Ghana know about the turnout at an 8:30 concert in Michigan? Somebody is running a small batch propaganda operation out of an internet cafe that has a plantain tree in the parking lot, and 50 Cent, whether he knew it or not, retweeted the smoke. Now the actual footage from later in the night showed a completely different picture. The venue was packed. Cash Dog rolled through. Rick Ross performed. The crowd knew every word to every hook, including the deep cuts, including the album cuts that never got radio play. The show did not just happen, the show thrived. But the internet had already frozen its opinion at 7:59, and the internet, once it freezes an opinion, would rather amputate a limb than update its data. That is the whole problem with this feud in 2026. The internet is not fact-checking. The internet is scoring. And 50 Cent is playing the internet the way Miles Davis played a trumpet, the way Basquiat played a canvas, the way a good chef plays a kitchen fire, with confidence, with intuition, and with just enough recklessness to keep the audience leaning forward. Season this with common sense, because Rick Ross is not innocent in this either, and pretending he is would be journalistic malpractice. Rick Ross has been feeding the same beast with both hands. Rick Ross posted a slide of the news covering the Reebok units returning to Costco. Rick Ross wrote, "Costco got these now, Lloyd banks high tops better." Rick Ross posted another slide accusing 50 Cent of filming the sneaker commercial at his Shreveport studio, and Rick Ross made a joke, "You forgot to build it." Come on, family. Come on now. That is not the boss talking. That is a group chat member with a keyboard. And the boss doesn't post from the group chat. The boss owns the group chat and reads it in silence, with a glass of something amber in his hand. But then 50 Cent came back, and this is where the temperature climbed into a fever. 50 Cent hopped on the same conversation and said, "In 5 minutes Rick Ross is going to be counting how many tenders he sells at Wingstop, how many fries he moves at Checkers, how many lemon pepper wet orders got misfiled last Sunday." That one line, did more damage than a diss record ever could, and it did the damage in 12 seconds. Because it wasn't about music. It was about identity. 50 Cent was telling Rick Ross, "You are not a rapper anymore. You're a franchise operator with a microphone hobby, and everybody watching this timeline can see it except you." And here is the piece nobody's touching. 50 Cent was almost telling the truth. Rick Ross's actual empire is not in his catalog. Rick Ross's empire is in wing joints, real estate, cars, and a film studio in Louisiana that he built while nobody was watching, while everybody else was arguing about who had the hotter verse on which mixtape. Rick Ross is one of the more diversified businessmen in hip-hop. That is not a slander. That is a compliment. That is a Harvard case study waiting to happen. But the man refuses to let his mouth catch up to his portfolio. Rick Ross keeps trying to win a rap argument he already outgrew a business cycle ago. Moving right along, because there is another wrinkle to this that deserves a spotlight. Rick Ross went back on Instagram after 50 Cent's television flex and said, "And I want you to sit with this," Rick Ross said, "if those streaming numbers other artists post are real, why can't they sell anything else? Why can't they sell alcohol? Why can't their sneakers move? Why can't their tequila move? Why can't their cologne move?" He said the new flex is no bots. He implied that 50 Cent's numbers, wherever they exist, are inflated by artificial traffic. Family, that is a big swing. Because when you accuse 50 Cent of inflating anything, you are picking a fight with a man who has audited his own name in public since 2003. 50 Cent, whatever else you say about him, does not fake numbers. He invents numbers. There is a difference, and the difference is a graduate seminar in personal branding. Now let me pull you into a piece of this that goes deeper than the shoe boxes and the streaming reports, because there is something structural happening here that neither man will acknowledge in public. Rick Ross is 50 years old. 50 Cent is 50 years old. Both of these men are staring down the same demographic cliff, and neither one wants to be the first to blink. Because in hip-hop, admitting you have aged out of the pop charts is like admitting you have aged out of relevance. And relevance, for a rapper of their generation, is the actual currency. Not the streams. Not the sneakers. Not the tenders. Not the tequila. The oxygen of relevance. And the only way to keep the oxygen flowing is to stay in a feud that guarantees them a cycle of coverage every 90 days, like a subscription service they never signed up for and can never cancel. If you don't believe me, look at the numbers. Every time these two exchange fire, both of their engagement rates spike. Both of their streaming counts get a small bump. Both of their names re-enter the trending column. Both of their older records find a new audience of teenagers who just discovered Google. It is symbiosis wearing a costume of hostility. It is a duet that pretends to be a duel. It is a co-headlining tour where the two acts spend the entire show pretending they don't share a tour bus. But here is the twist. And this is the twist that changed how I see this whole ledger. 50 Cent doesn't need this feud anymore. And that is what makes his participation in it so revealing, so tender, so almost tragic. 50 Cent has a television empire. 50 Cent has spirits. 50 Cent has boxing. 50 Cent has film. 50 Cent has an executive producer credit on more scripted content than most white showrunners in Los Angeles. 50 Cent, functionally, could delete Rick Ross from his phone and his revenue would not flinch, not even a shudder. And yet, every single week, 50 Cent shows up to the arena. Every single week, 50 Cent stretches out on Instagram like a fighter warming up for a bout that has been over for a decade. Why? Because 50 Cent is not fighting Rick Ross. 50 Cent is fighting the version of himself that was ever smaller than Rick Ross. And every time Rick Ross has a bad week, 50 Cent gets to remind that old ghost, the ghost of a young Curtis Jackson in Queens, standing on a corner, waiting to be seen, that he made it out and made it bigger. This is not a music beef. This is a therapy session dressed up as a feud and monetized with a ring light. And on the other side of the ring, Rick Ross has his own ghost, and his ghost is loud too. Rick Ross is fighting the version of himself that was ever questioned. Rick Ross came into the game with a backstory that got picked apart in public. Rick Ross had to build a persona in the middle of a public verification crisis that would have ended a lesser man. And every time Rick Ross gets a chance to prove he is smart, he grabs a calculator and grabs a whiteboard and turns Instagram into a lecture hall because Rick Ross is still, on some level, defending the intellectual credibility of a man the internet once tried to dissolve. That is why he explains the streams. That is why he breaks down the equivalencies. That is why he keeps triple underlining the 22,000 and the 20,000. Rick Ross is not talking to 50 Cent. Rick Ross is talking to a 17-year-old version of himself who never got to defend his own name at the lunch table in front of the kids who whispered. And once you see this feud through that lens, everything gets sadder and clearer and quieter at the same time. Now, I want to zoom back out to the culture because there is a broader conversation happening that people are missing, and I would be doing you a disservice if I skipped it. Hip-hop, as a genre, is losing something. It is losing the seriousness of its own commercial vocabulary. We are watching two men, two of the most successful men the genre has ever produced, argue about whether streams count as albums. 20 years ago, that argument didn't exist. You either moved units or you didn't. The plaques were literal. The wall in the office had a physical CD encased in gold. Today, the plaques are algorithmic estimates. The gold is a metaphor. The ceremony is a group text. And nobody knows what a hit really means anymore, including the people who hand out the trophies. That vacuum, that quiet erosion of the ruler, is what created the space for a feud like this to survive. Because in a world where nobody agrees on what winning looks like, both men can claim they are winning simultaneously. Rick Ross can say, "My album is a slow burn." 50 Cent can say, "My television slate outperforms your music." And both of them can be right and wrong at the same time, in the same paragraph, in the same news cycle. That is not a bug. That is the whole business model of modern hip-hop discourse in 2026. Handle this next part softly, because it is going to sound harsh, and I don't enjoy saying it. Both Rick Ross and 50 Cent have graduated out of the demographic that decides what a hit song is. Neither one of them controls the 20-year-old ear anymore. And that is not a shame, that is just physics. Nobody controls the 20-year-old ear forever. Not Michael Jackson. Not Jay-Z. Not Kendrick. Not Drake. Time flattens everybody eventually, and time does not accept bribes. But the healthiest version of any legacy artist is the one who accepts that the crown is now decorative and starts building the museum. Rick Ross should be building the museum. 50 Cent should be building the museum. Instead, they are both circling each other in the parking lot outside the museum with their sleeves rolled up and their phones fully charged. Now, let me talk to you about the theater layer of this, because there is a theater layer and it is elaborate. Both of these men, and I mean this with complete respect, are excellent performers. They understand how to package hostility. They understand how to time a caption to the exact hour when engagement peaks. They understand that a well-placed 13-word Instagram slide can generate more press than a 9-figure marketing campaign staffed by a 50-person agency. And they have figured out, quietly, that manufactured feud content is a lower-cost, higher-yield promotional vehicle than paid marketing has ever been. In other words, I hate to say it, but I have to say it, because you deserve the truth. This looks less like a beef every year and more like a collaboration. A joint venture branded as a rivalry. A pay-per-view where nobody sells the ticket because the pay-per-view is free and the tickets are the followers themselves. The Whisper Network keeps telling me that both camps have people who know how to keep the temperature at exactly the right degree. Not enough heat to trigger legal fallout. Not enough cool to fade from the timeline. A perfectly tuned oven, cooking the same dinner for 15 years, and every table in the neighborhood keeps ordering off the menu without ever asking why the menu never changes. Now, the reason I am even taking this seriously in 2026 is because there is a real casualty in this feud, and it is not either man's bank account. The real casualty is the message it sends to the next generation of Black entrepreneurs in music. Because you have two of the most successful men the genre has ever produced, and instead of publicly modeling reconciliation, mentorship, or even indifference, they are publicly modeling permanent low-simmering hostility as a business strategy. That is a template. And templates get copied. Young rappers watch this. Young executives watch this. Young business owners watch this. And they internalize the idea that success in this culture means never being able to sit next to a peer without a caption war breaking out on the timeline before dessert arrives. That is the piece of the ledger that costs more than any album sale, and neither Rick Ross nor 50 Cent has ever been asked to answer for it in an interview, and neither one of them has ever volunteered a thoughtful answer without a camera being present, which tells you exactly how deep the reflex runs. And here is one more layer, because I would be robbing you if I skipped it. There is a whole generation of hip-hop journalists who built their platforms on the back of this exact feud. Blogs monetized it. Podcasts scheduled around it. Reaction channels raised their kids on the ad revenue from it. The Rick Ross versus 50 Cent economy is not just two men. It is an entire ecosystem, and the ecosystem has employees, freelancers, contractors, and a payroll. That is why the feud never dies. Too many people eat when the two of them argue. Too many mouths depend on the next Instagram slide. If Rick Ross and 50 Cent shook hands tomorrow, half of hip-hop media would have to file for unemployment by the end of the quarter, and everybody in that ecosystem knows it, which is why nobody in that ecosystem has ever seriously tried to broker a peace. Now let me get you back to the ground level, because family, we owe you a little more of the actual saga before I close this out. Rick Ross responded to the television flex by pivoting again, and I do mean again. Rick Ross went on and said, and this is a direct paraphrase, those drastic fall-offs are the artists whose numbers are inflated. Rick Ross said the new flex is no bots. He said keep it genuine. Keep it pure. Let the music fight the battles. He said the biggest boss is telling everybody how it goes. He said, do the long game, baby. He said we are here 20 years later. And then, this is the part that made me put my headphones down and audibly sigh, he said, those gun sneakers are about to be in Costco, baby. He said give Lloyd Banks his own high top. He said the other G-Unit affiliates don't even have shoe deals. Come on. Come on, Rick Ross. Come on now. The problem is not that the joke is bad. The joke is actually kind of clever if you squint. The problem is that the joke is transparent. When you throw a punch at a man's Costco distribution deal, you are telling the audience that you have been paying attention to your rival's business filings and quarterly retail reports. And once you telegraph that level of attention, you have lost the psychological high ground. The boss doesn't read the enemy's Costco statements. The boss doesn't know they're at Costco. The boss doesn't shop there. The boss has a personal shopper who has a personal shopper. Now 50 Cent, being who he is going to respond. And when 50 Cent responds, he will not respond in words. He will respond in release schedule. That is his signature move. Rick Ross posts. 50 Cent announces. Rick Ross explains. 50 Cent premieres. Rick Ross calculates. 50 Cent monetizes. Rick Ross clarifies. 50 Cent sells. It is the same choreography every quarter, and neither dancer has updated the routine since 2015, and neither dancer wants to. Here is the piece nobody's touching, though, and I want you to lean in for this one. 50 Cent, for all of his bulldozer energy, has a soft spot that this feud exposes. He cannot walk away. He is genetically incapable of leaving Rick Ross alone. He can talk about how petty Rick Ross is, but 50 Cent's own hallway chatter is the loudest in the entire building. It is fascinating. It is human. And it is, honestly, a little bit sweet in the darkest possible way. Two men who cannot exist without each other. Two men who have built their brands, in part, on the friction between them. Two men who owe each other a percentage of their own relevance and would probably die before signing the check. Alright, let me tie this off, because I have kept you here longer than I promised, and my producer is making the wrap it up motion behind the camera. The full ledger, as of this week, looks like this. Rick Ross has an album out. The album has soft first cycle numbers. Rick Ross has spent more time defending the numbers than promoting the songs, which is the professional equivalent of arriving at a wedding and giving a speech about your own divorce halfway through the toast. 50 Cent has used the moment to remind the world that his television empire is quietly the strongest content operation any hip-hop artist has ever built. Rick Ross has weaponized the sneakers. 50 Cent has weaponized the wings. Both men have accused the other of being obsolete. Both men have failed to notice that their obsolescence is the shared product they have been selling for a decade, and the shared product is more profitable than either of their solo careers at this point. Now the question, and I want you to sit with this, because this is the question, not a question. The question is not who won the week. The question is, what would it look like if either one of them decided to stop? Because whichever one of them stops first, at this point, actually wins. Whichever one of them turns off the notifications, deletes the Instagram slide, and walks toward the museum, that is the man who ends up with the last chapter, the closing paragraph, the final say. Neither one of them seems to want that chapter. And that is the part that keeps me up at night as a person who covers this culture for a living, because the smartest move in the entire game is the one neither player will make. Because look, I love Rick Ross. I love 50 Cent. I have listened to both of these men shape entire summers of my life. I have driven with the windows down to Hustlin'. I have driven with the windows up to Many Men. I have made the same face during the Imani hooks that everybody else made. I have watched both of these men build entire universes out of a set of speakers and a set of opinions. And it is heartbreaking to watch two universes collide in the parking lot of an app that they don't even own equity in. Let me leave you with this thought, because it is the one that will echo. There is a version of this story, 6 months from now, where the feud resets again. There is a version where 50 Cent drops a Fightland trailer that features a Rick Ross sound-alike as a comedic villain in the 3rd episode. There is a version where Rick Ross opens a Wingstop in a strip mall directly across the street from a G-Unit-affiliated business and puts up a neon sign that faces the front door. There is a version where these two men accidentally end up on the same red carpet at some industry function and pretend they don't see each other for the cameras while their handlers negotiate the seating chart. And in every version, the algorithm feeds. And in every version, the followers grow. And in every version, we, the audience, the culture, the ones watching from home with a plate of leftovers on our lap, pretend it is spontaneous, when it is actually one of the most refined pieces of long-form entertainment either man has ever produced. So here is where I land, family, and I promise I am closing. Rick Ross made an album. The album is a solid 7. The rollout was a solid 3. His mathematical defense of streams to equivalent albums was a 2.5, but a memorable 2.5, and honestly kind of endearing in the way a middle schooler defending their science project is endearing. You want to hug him and correct him at the same time. 50 Cent's counter was a 9, surgical, calm, cost-free. But the deeper ledger, the real ledger, is that both men have been running a joint franchise for over a decade, and neither one is willing to admit the franchise is the whole point, and the franchise is the reason either of them is still in this conversation at all. And that, folks, is why I keep coming back to cover this. Because underneath the shoe jokes and the wing jokes and the streaming reports and the Detroit clips and the Ghana-based Twitter accounts and the Costco slides and the Lloyd Banks tribute high tops and the Shreveport studio disputes and the Reebok redistribution deals and the Wingstop tenders and the Checkers fries and the tequila accusations, underneath all of it is one of the most fascinating psychological duets in the history of American pop culture. Two men, two ghosts. One long punchline that neither one will ever stop delivering, and the punchline is the whole show. Drop your read down below, and let me hear what's echoing in your corner. Tell me which side you're on this week, because I know it changes, and I know you know it changes. Tell me which move surprised you the most. Tell me if you think Rick Ross should retire the calculator and let the album breathe. Tell me if you think 50 Cent should retire the Shark Week captions and let the television empire speak for itself. Tell me if you think either one of them is capable of stopping, or if you think, like I do, that they are locked in this dance until one of them retires the microphone for good and the other one is left explaining the choreography to an empty room. And if you're new around here, hit that subscribe, hit that bell, and stay close, because the moment Rick Ross posts the next Instagram lecture, or the moment 50 Cent drops the next fight lanties, or the moment either one of them wanders into a red carpet situation with the other one, I will be right back on this microphone to walk you through it with the same level of care and the same level of honesty. This has been your correspondent for the culture. Stay tuned, stay curious, stay a little bit skeptical of the timeline, keep your ear low and your standards high, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.